Commander Thalric stood on the bridge of his warship, the Eternal Dominion, and looked at the holographic display showing another conquered world. Krilo 7 had fallen in just 12 days. The planet was covered in acid rain and filled with creatures that had shells harder than diamond. But none of that mattered now. The Vrelnik's empire had won again. This was the 17th death world they had conquered. Each time, the pattern was the same. These primitive worlds always thought their dangerous environments made them strong. They believed their harsh climates and deadly predators made them warriors. They were always wrong. Thalric had spent 40 years studying death worlds. He knew their weaknesses better than anyone in the Empire. The secret was simple. Find the strongest creatures on the planet, kill them with superior weapons, and watch everything else fall apart. It worked every single time. Another easy victory, said his second officer, standing beside him. These death worlds never learn. They think surviving their own planet makes them ready for war. Thalric nodded slowly. They don't understand real power. They adapt to their environment over millions of years. We build technology that makes environment meaningless. That's why we always win. The Vrelnik's empire had perfected this strategy over 3 centuries. Their scientists would study a death world from orbit for several weeks. They calculated everything: the strength of the dominant species, their weapons, their numbers, their tactics. Then the empire deployed forces that were exactly 30% stronger. Not more, because that wasted resources. Not less, because victory had to be certain. It was efficient. It was scientific. It had never failed. The door to the bridge opened and a young scout officer walked in quickly. He carried a data tablet that glowed with new information. "Commander, we have finished scanning the Sol system. We found the 3rd planet from their sun. They call it Earth." Thalric took the tablet and began reading. Earth checked every box for a death world classification. The planet had extreme temperature changes that could kill most species. Ice covered the poles while deserts baked under intense heat near the equator. The planet experienced regular earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Storms formed that could level entire forests. The wildlife was interesting too. Large predators with claws and teeth, tiny organisms called viruses and bacteria that could kill creatures millions of times their size. Even the plants were sometimes poisonous or covered in thorns. "What about the dominant species?" Thalric asked. The scout pulled up images of humans. Thalric studied them carefully. They were bipedal mammals with no natural armor, no claws, no venom, no exceptional strength. Their running speed was average. Their senses were weak compared to most death world species. They had no fur thick enough to protect them from their own planet's temperature extremes. "They look fragile," Thalric said. "How did they become dominant?" "They use tools, Commander. They have developed basic technology. They recently achieved faster-than-light travel, though their ships are primitive compared to ours. They have split into several nations that compete for resources." Thalric smiled. A divided species was easier to conquer. "Threat assessment?" The scout checked his data. "Minimal, Commander. Our calculations show complete subjugation in 7 days. Their weapons are chemical-based missiles and primitive energy weapons. Their military forces are scattered across multiple nations with poor coordination. We estimate casualties on our side will be less than 2%. "Excellent. Prepare the fleet. We move on Earth in 3 days." Meanwhile, on Earth, Captain Jiwon Kim stood in the United Earth Defense Force Command Center buried deep beneath the city of Seoul. The facility was built 30 meters underground, protected by layers of steel and concrete. It had been constructed after the Resource Wars, a terrible conflict that had nearly destroyed humanity 3 decades earlier. Jiwon was looking at the large screen that showed space around Earth. Red dots appeared at the edge of the solar system. Alien ships. Dozens of them. "They're here," said her communications officer, a young man named Tae-hyun. His hand shook slightly as he worked his console. Admiral Minho Park stood beside Jiwon. He was an old man now with gray hair and deep lines on his face. He had fought in the Resource Wars when he was young. He had seen what humans could do to each other when pushed to the edge of extinction. "Are they trying to communicate?" Minho asked. Tae-hyun nodded. "Yes, sir." Message coming through now. The screen changed to show a Vrelnik's commander. The alien looked similar to an Earth reptile, but larger and with 4 arms instead of 2. Its eyes were cold and calculating. "Humans of Earth," the alien said in a mechanical voice translated by their computers. "I am Commander Thalric of the Vrelnik's Empire. Your planet has been selected for incorporation into our empire. You have one choice. Submit immediately or face complete extinction. You have 12 hours to surrender your governments and military forces. Resist and you will be eliminated. The transmission ended. The command center was silent for a long moment. Then someone laughed. It was Lieutenant Hana Lee, the tactical officer. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a quick mind. They gave us 12 hours, she said. Like we're some primitive species that will panic and surrender. Ji-won looked at Admiral Minho. They had discussed this possibility for years. Ever since humanity achieved faster-than-light travel, they knew contact with aliens was inevitable. They had prepared for many scenarios: peaceful contact, trade negotiations, cultural exchange, and war. Send a response, Ji-won said calmly. Tell them we need 72 hours to coordinate with all Earth nations. Tell them we want to negotiate terms. Taehyun sent the message. They're accepting, Captain. They agreed to wait 72 hours. Good, Minho said. That gives us 3 days. 3 days for what? Asked Doyun Choi, the weapons specialist. He was a large man with scarred hands from years of working with explosives. Ji-won turned to face her team. These were people she had worked with for years. They had trained together, planned together, and survived bureaucratic battles together. Now they would face a real war. 3 days to prepare, she said. They think we're panicking. They think we're trying to convince our governments to surrender. They're wrong. She pulled up a holographic map of Earth. Red markers appeared over major cities, military bases, and industrial centers. Blue markers showed hidden facilities that didn't appear on any public records, weapon platforms hidden in the oceans, underground bunkers filled with missiles, satellites with capabilities that no civilian knew about. We're not preparing to surrender, Ji-won continued. We're preparing to show them what happens when you threaten Earth. Minho nodded slowly. Activate Protocol Death World. Protocol Death World had been created after the Resource Wars. When humanity nearly destroyed itself, the survivors learned important lessons. They learned that sometimes the only way to prevent war was to be absolutely terrifying in combat. They learned that showing weakness invited attack. They learned that the weapons they built to kill each other could be turned on anyone who threatened their world. Over the next 72 hours, Earth transformed. Military forces moved into position. Weapons that had been maintained but never used were activated. Civilians in major cities were quietly evacuated to underground shelters. It was done carefully without panic because humanity had practiced this many times. In orbit, Thalrix watched and saw nothing unusual. The humans seemed to be having political discussions. Their leaders argued on their communication networks. It all looked like typical primitive behavior. They're going to surrender, his second officer predicted. They know they can't win. Thalrix agreed. In 67 hours, Earth would belong to the Relnix Empire. It would be the 18th Death World conquest. The easiest one yet. He had no idea how wrong he was. The 72 hours passed quickly. Commander Thalrix sat in his command chair aboard the Eternal Dominion as the deadline arrived. The humans had not surrendered. This was expected. Most Death World species needed to see the Empire's strength before they understood resistance was futile. Begin orbital bombardment, Thalrix ordered. Target their military installations first. Cities second. Make it quick. 50 Vrelnix warships moved into position above Earth. Each ship carried plasma cannons powerful enough to destroy a city block with a single shot. They had used these weapons on 16 other Death Worlds. The results were always the same: immediate devastation followed by rapid surrender. The first salvo of plasma fire struck Earth's surface. Military bases in North America, Asia, and Europe exploded in massive fireballs. Thalrix watched the tactical display with satisfaction. Each target was being destroyed exactly as planned. Deploy ground forces, he commanded. 10,000 warriors to each major continent. Standard suppression formation. Dropships launched from the warships and began their descent through Earth's atmosphere. Everything was going according to the plan that had worked 17 times before. Then the tactical officer shouted a warning. Commander! Multiple launches from the planet's surface. Thousands of contacts rising from ocean positions, underground silos, and mobile platforms. Thalrix looked at the display in confusion. The humans were launching missiles. But these weren't the primitive chemical rockets his scouts had reported. These missiles moved fast, incredibly fast. Some were traveling at nearly 20% of light speed. Evasive maneuvers, Thalrix ordered. Activate point defense systems. The Vrelnik's warships began firing their defensive weapons at the incoming missiles. They destroyed hundreds of them. But there were thousands more. The humans had launched everything at once. The first missile hit the Eternal Dominion on the starboard side. The warship's shields were designed to stop attacks from Deathworld predators and conventional weapons. They held for exactly 1 second before the fusion warhead punched through. The explosion tore through 3 decks. Atmosphere vented into space. Thalrix felt his chair shake violently as alarms screamed throughout the ship. "Damage report," he shouted. "Starboard engine destroyed. Hull breach on decks 7 through 9. Shield generators offline." Another missile hit. Then another. The Eternal Dominion, flagship of the Deathworld Conquest Fleet, broke into 3 pieces. Thalrix barely made it to an escape pod before his section of the ship began tumbling toward Earth. As his pod fell through the atmosphere, he looked up through the small window. The entire fleet was being destroyed. 50 warships that had conquered 17 Deathworlds were being torn apart by weapons the humans had supposedly just invented. Thalrix realized too late what had happened. The humans hadn't just invented faster-than-light travel. They had spent decades building weapons to kill each other. They had missiles designed to hit targets moving at orbital velocities. They had nuclear and fusion weapons meant to destroy entire cities. They had point defense systems designed to stop thousands of incoming missiles at once. The humans hadn't built these weapons to fight aliens. They had built them to fight themselves. And now those weapons were pointed upward. In the command center beneath Seoul, Captain Ji-won Kim watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. Every Vrelnik's warship was either destroyed or retreating. The orbital bombardment had caused terrible damage to Earth's military bases, but those bases had been mostly evacuated. The casualties were far lower than expected. "Status of enemy ground forces?" she asked. Lieutenant Hana Lee checked her screens. 43 dropships made it through our missile screen. They're landing now in the bombed areas: Beijing, Mumbai, São Paulo, Tokyo, and 15 other cities. "Let them land," Ji-won said. "Admiral Minho, activate the ground protocols." Admiral Minho Park nodded and sent the command. Across Earth, military units that had been hiding in the ruins of the bombed bases moved into position. The Vrelniks thought they had destroyed Earth's military infrastructure. They were wrong. The buildings they destroyed were empty shells. The real bases were underground. In what remained of Tokyo, Vrelnik Squad Commander Kelvin led his unit through the rubble. He commanded 50 elite warriors, each wearing powered armor that could withstand extreme punishment. They had conquered 4 Deathworlds together. They were the best the Empire had. Thermal sensors show human heat signatures 2 blocks ahead, his scanner officer reported. Underground structures. Approximately 200 individuals. Standard cave tactics, Kelvin said. All Deathworlders hide underground eventually. Deploy sonic disruptors. Drive them out into the open. His unit moved forward confidently. The sonic disruptors were designed to make underground hiding impossible. The sound waves would disorient and frighten any creature, forcing them to flee to the surface where they could be captured or killed. Kelvin never saw the explosion that killed him. The thermal signatures his scanner detected were decoys, electronic devices designed to mimic human body heat. The real ambush came from the damaged buildings on either side of the street. Those buildings weren't as destroyed as they appeared. They had been reinforced with steel and concrete, then covered with debris to look ruined. Inside each building were 50 human soldiers with weapons that could pierce Vrelnik's armor. The ambush lasted 15 seconds. Kelvin's entire unit was destroyed before they could return fire. Similar ambushes were happening across the planet wherever Vrelnik's forces landed. In Mumbai, Sergeant Bora Nam commanded a unit of 40 soldiers hiding in what appeared to be a collapsed shopping complex. She watched through her scope as a Vrelnik's patrol moved down the street below. "Wait for it," she whispered into her radio. "Let them get into the kill zone." The Vrelniks were scanning for enemies, but they were looking for heat signatures and movement. They didn't think to scan for the carefully hidden explosives that lined the street. They didn't expect the buildings above them to be filled with soldiers. "Now," Bora said calmly. Her unit opened fire. Armor-piercing rounds struck the Vrelniks from 3 directions at once. The aliens tried to take cover, but the street itself exploded as buried charges detonated. In 30 seconds, the patrol was eliminated. "Collect their weapons and armor," Bora ordered. "Intelligence wants everything we can capture." This was happening across Earth. The Vrelniks expected to fight primitive warriors who would panic and scatter. Instead, they found disciplined soldiers who had spent decades training for exactly this kind of combat. Commander Thalrix's escape pod crashed in the Australian outback, far from any human cities. He climbed out of the wreckage and activated his emergency beacon. Rescue would come eventually. The Empire never abandoned its commanders. He looked up at the sky and saw the burning wreckage of his fleet falling through the atmosphere like shooting stars. 50 warships, thousands of warriors, all destroyed in less than an hour. For the first time in his 40-year career, Thalrix felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Not fear of death, but fear of the unknown. The humans were not like other Death World species. Those species were strong because their planets made them strong. They fought with instinct and aggression. Humans were different. They fought with purpose and planning. They used tactics that Thalrix had never seen before. They set traps. They used deception. They turned their own destroyed cities into weapons. Worst of all, they had weapons designed specifically to kill their own species. What kind of Death World created creatures that built fusion bombs to use on themselves? Thalrix activated his communicator and sent an emergency message to the Empire. Invasion has failed. Requesting immediate reinforcement fleet. Threat level upgraded to maximum. Earth is not like other Death Worlds. Humans are not like other species. Send everything we have. In Seoul, Ji-won read the intercepted message and smiled grimly. They're calling for reinforcements. How long until a new fleet arrives? Intelligence estimates 40 to 50 days, Hana reported. They'll send everything they have. Probably 10 times larger than the first fleet. Good, Admiral Minho said. That gives us 40 days to prepare a proper welcome. Ji-won looked at her team. They were tired but not defeated. Earth had been attacked, but Earth was still standing. The Vrelniks had learned an important lesson today. Earth wasn't just another Death World. Earth had created a species that didn't just survive their hostile planet. They had mastered it, and now they would show the galaxy what that really meant. 3 weeks after the failed invasion, Commander Thalrix stood in a temporary command center in the Australian outback. It was the only place on Earth where the Vrelniks still had control, and even that control was costing them hundreds of soldiers every day. The rescue fleet had arrived a week ago, bringing 5,000 fresh warriors and supplies. But they were not winning. They were barely surviving. Report, Thalrix demanded from his new tactical officer. He had already lost 2 officers since landing on Earth. The officer looked exhausted. Dark circles marked his eyes and his hands trembled as he worked the controls. Commander, we control approximately 3% of Earth's landmass. We have lost contact with 32 of our 43 original landing zones. Casualties stand at 78% of total forces. How is that possible? Thalrix asked, though he already knew the answer. He had seen it with his own eyes over the past 3 weeks. The humans adapt, Commander. Every tactic we use works once, maybe twice. Then they learn how to counter it. They study our weapons, our movements, our strategies. Within days, they have developed new tactics specifically designed to defeat us. It was true. The Vrelniks had tried standard suppression tactics. Establish a perimeter, patrol aggressively, eliminate resistance. The humans had responded by avoiding direct confrontation. They used small units to strike from unexpected directions, then disappeared before the Vrelniks could respond. The Vrelniks tried aerial surveillance. The humans hid underground during the day and moved only at night. The Vrelniks used thermal scanners. The humans learned to create decoys that fooled the scanners. The Vrelniks sent patrols to hunt human soldiers. The humans ambushed every patrol. It was like fighting an enemy that could read minds. Everything the Vrelniks tried, the humans had a counter for within days. What about the captured technology? Thalrix asked. Our dropships and weapons? The tactical officer pulled up a report that made Thalrix's blood run cold. Commander, the humans have captured 17 of our dropships intact. They've reverse-engineered our power systems, weapons, and shields. Intelligence reports show they now have armed dropships in the air with human pilots. Impossible. That technology took us centuries to develop. I can only report facts, Commander. Human engineering teams are analyzing our technology faster than we believed possible. They're not just copying it. They're improving it. They've modified our weapons to work with their power systems. They've adapted our armor to fit human bodies. They're using our own technology against us. In Los Angeles, engineer Su Ji-han stood in a converted aircraft hangar, looking at a captured Vrelniks dropship. Around her, a team of 20 engineers worked frantically, taking apart every system and understanding how it functioned. Suji had been a civilian aerospace designer before the invasion. She designed passenger aircraft and satellites. Now she was part of the United Earth Defense Force's Rapid Acquisition Team. Her job was simple: take alien technology and make it work for humans. "The power coupling doesn't fit our standard connections," said Minsok, one of her team members. He was young, barely 25, but brilliant with electrical systems. "Then make an adapter," Suji replied. "We don't need to copy their systems perfectly. We just need them to work." Captain Ji-won Kim walked into the hangar accompanied by Admiral Minho Park. They were doing a tour of all the facilities working on captured Vrelnik's technology. "Status report?" Ji-won asked. Suji wiped grease from her hands and walked over. "We have 6 dropships operational. The power systems are compatible with our fusion reactors, which surprised us. The weapons took more work, but we figured it out. The shields are still giving us trouble." "How long until we can field them in combat?" Admiral Minho asked. "They're ready now, sir. We have human pilots training on them as we speak." Ji-won smiled. "Good work. The Vrelnik's reinforcement fleet will arrive in about 30 days. We need every advantage we can get." Suji nodded and returned to work. She didn't think about the impossibility of what she was doing. She didn't worry that it should take years to understand alien technology. She just solved one problem at a time, the same way she had always worked. That was the human advantage. They didn't need to understand everything perfectly. They just needed to understand enough to make it work, and they could do that very, very quickly. In the Australian outback, Thalrix received a new report that made everything worse. "Commander, human aircraft approaching." "But they're not human aircraft. They're ours." 3 Vrelnik's dropships appeared on the horizon, flying in formation, but they had Earth symbols painted on their hulls. Inside were human pilots who had spent 3 weeks learning to fly alien spacecraft. Lieutenant Kyung-soo Baek sat in the pilot seat of the lead dropship. He had been a fighter pilot before the invasion, flying human-designed aircraft in training exercises. Now he flew a craft that was more advanced than anything Earth had built. "Targets acquired," said his co-pilot Yuna Shin. She had been a professional gamer before the war, playing combat simulators for entertainment. Now she used those same reflexes to control real weapons. Vrelnik's convoy below. 4 supply vehicles, 2 escort ships. "Don't destroy them," Kyung-soo said. "Command wants us to capture the supplies." The 3 human-piloted dropships dove toward the Vrelnik's convoy. The aliens tried to flee, but human pilots had one massive advantage. They had evolved to fly in Earth's atmosphere, the most chaotic and unpredictable flight environment in known space. Earth had weather patterns that changed rapidly, storms that could tear aircraft apart, wind currents that shifted without warning. Human pilots learned to fly in these conditions. They developed instincts for 3-dimensional combat that no other species possessed. Kyung-soo brought his dropship into a spiral dive that would have killed a Vrelnik's pilot from the extreme forces. He came up behind the convoy, matched their speed perfectly, and fired a precise burst from his weapons that disabled the escort ships without destroying them. "Convoy neutralized," Yuna reported. "No casualties. Ground teams can move in for capture." This happened repeatedly over the 3-week period. Every piece of Vrelnik's technology that humans captured, they learned from. Every battle they fought, they improved. Every mistake they made, they corrected. The Vrelniks had evolved on a peaceful garden world. They conquered other planets through overwhelming technological superiority. They never needed to adapt quickly because they were always the strongest. Humans were different. Humans had spent their entire evolutionary history adapting or dying. They learned new skills with terrifying speed. They turned enemy advantages into weaknesses. They improvised solutions to problems they had never encountered before. In the Australian outback, Thalrix watched his forces slowly crumble. The humans were tightening their grip, closing in from all directions. His supply lines were cut. His reinforcements were being destroyed before they could reach him. His warriors were demoralized and scared. Then his communications officer reported something that made Thalrix realize how completely they had underestimated Earth. "Commander, the humans have infiltrated our communications network. They're listening to everything." A voice spoke in perfect Vrelnik's language through their secure channels. It was Captain Ji-won Kim. Her translators had learned the language from captured prisoners in just 3 weeks. Commander Thalrix, this is Captain Jaiwan Kim of the United Earth Defense Force. Your reinforcement fleet is entering our solar system now. We've been tracking them for the past week. We know their numbers, their weapons, and their strategy. We've prepared a greeting for them. Thalrix tried to speak, but G1 continued. Your empire sent you here because you've conquered 17 death worlds. You thought Earth would be easy. You didn't understand what makes Earth different. Those other planets were dangerous because of their environments. Earth is dangerous because of us. We are the apex predator on our planet, Commander. We always have been. We didn't just survive Earth, we conquered it. We killed every species that threatened us. We built cities in deserts and jungles and Arctic wastelands. We turned a hostile planet into our home through intelligence and determination. You came here expecting to fight animals. Instead, you found hunters who spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war. You're not fighting a death world species, Commander. You're fighting humanity, and we never stop learning. The transmission ended. Thalrix looked at the tactical display showing his shrinking territory. He thought about the reinforcement fleet arriving soon. 500 warships, the largest force the Empire had ever assembled. It should be enough to crush Earth. But Thalrix had spent 3 weeks fighting humans. He had seen how they adapted, how they learned, how they turned every advantage against their enemies. And he realized something that terrified him. 500 ships might not be enough. Grand Admiral Vexthor commanded the largest fleet the Vrelnik's empire had ever assembled. 500 warships filled the space around his flagship. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a city. Together they could crack a planet's crust and turn the surface into molten glass. Status report, he demanded as the fleet entered the Sol system. His tactical officer studied the displays. We are approaching the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. No contact with Commander Thalrix's ground forces. Sensors detect heavy debris in orbit around Earth. Analysis suggests it's the wreckage of the first invasion fleet. Vexthor nodded. He had read Thalrix's reports. The first fleet had underestimated Earth. They had used standard Death World suppression tactics against an enemy that didn't fight like other Death World species. That mistake would not be repeated. Maintain fleet cohesion, Vexthor ordered. Standard battle formation. We advance together and overwhelm their defenses with concentrated firepower. No splitting up. No small unit tactics. We stay together and crush everything in our path. A communication signal came through on an open channel. A human voice spoke in translated Vrelnik's language. Grand Admiral Vexthor, this is Admiral Minho Park of the United Earth Defense Force. We know you're here. We've been tracking your fleet since you entered our solar system. I'm giving you one opportunity to withdraw peacefully. Vexthor laughed. You dare threaten me? I command 500 warships. Your first fleet was destroyed by primitive missiles. We've analyzed that battle. We've upgraded our shields and point defense systems. Your tactics won't work twice. That's where you're wrong, Admiral Minho replied calmly. You've spent the last 50 days analyzing our tactics from the first battle. We've spent the last 50 days preparing for you. I want you to understand something before this begins. Earth isn't a death world because of our environment. It's a death world because of what that environment created. We are the apex predator of our planet. We always have been. And we're about to show you why. The transmission ended. Vexthor ordered the fleet forward. They moved in tight formation, shields overlapping, point defense systems active. Every lesson from the first battle had been applied. They were ready for another missile barrage. What they weren't ready for was silence. The fleet passed through the asteroid belt without encountering any resistance. No missiles launched. No human ships appeared. The tactical display showed nothing but rocks and empty space. This is wrong, Vexthor's tactical officer said quietly. Where are they? The answer came 30 seconds later. The asteroids around them suddenly came alive with weapon signatures. Thousands of contacts appeared on the tactical display at once. The humans had spent 50 days hollowing out asteroids and turning them into weapon platforms. They had installed stealth systems that made the platforms invisible until they activated. They had positioned these platforms throughout the asteroid belt, creating a 3-dimensional kill zone that the Vrelnik's fleet had flown directly into. Evasive maneuvers. Vexthor shouted. All ships scatter and... The humans opened fire before he could finish the order. But they didn't use the fusion missiles that had worked in the first battle. They used something different. Something the Vrelniks hadn't prepared for. Kinetic impactors. Simple chunks of iron and rock accelerated to 20% of light speed. They were invisible to sensors until impact. They didn't have engines or guidance systems to detect. They were just fast-moving projectiles, and they were absolutely devastating. The first salvo destroyed 50 Vrelnik's warships in 3 seconds. The fleet tried to scatter, but that was exactly what the humans wanted. Scattered ships were easier targets. Captain Jiwon Kim commanded the defense from her flagship, Seoul's Pride, positioned behind Jupiter's massive radiation belt. The belt provided natural cover that the Vrelnik sensors couldn't penetrate. "Enemy fleet is scattering," reported Lieutenant Hana Lee from the tactical station. "Exactly as predicted. Phase 2, Jiwon ordered. Launch the fighters." Hundreds of small craft emerged from hiding positions throughout the asteroid belt. Some were human-designed fighters. Others were captured Vrelnik's dropships modified with Earth weapons. All of them had one mission: attack the scattered Vrelnik ships before they could regroup. Lieutenant Kyung-soo Bak led Wolf Squadron into battle. His flight consisted of 12 pilots flying modified Vrelnik's dropships. They had trained for this moment for 50 days, learning every weakness in Vrelnik ship design. "Target the engine sections," Kyung-soo transmitted to his squadron. "Their shields are strongest at the front. We hit them from behind." His squadron dove into the chaos of the scattered Vrelnik's fleet. The enemy ships were larger and more powerful, but they were designed for ship-to-ship combat in open space. They weren't built to fight small, fast-moving targets in the middle of an asteroid field. Yoona Shin, Kyung-soo's co-pilot, locked weapons on a Vrelnik's cruiser that was trying to retreat. Missiles locked, firing. The missiles struck the cruiser's engine section. The ship's shields held for a moment, then collapsed. Secondary explosions rippled through the vessel as its power systems failed. This was happening throughout the asteroid belt. The Vrelnik's fleet, designed to fight other fleets in organized battles, was being torn apart by guerrilla tactics they couldn't counter. On his flagship, Grand Admiral Vexthor watched his fleet disintegrate. 100 ships destroyed in the first 10 minutes. Another 100 damaged or crippled. The rest were scattered and being hunted by human fighters. "All ships, full retreat," he ordered. "Jump to hyperspace immediately." His navigation officer looked up with fear in his eyes. "Grand Admiral, the humans have deployed mines around all the safe hyperspace jump points. If we jump now, we'll be torn apart during the transition." Vexthor felt something he hadn't experienced in 50 years of military service: despair. The humans had studied Vrelnik's technology from captured ships. They had learned the locations of safe jump points in the Sol system. And they had mined every single one. Ships that tried to jump to hyperspace inside the minefields were torn apart as they entered the transition. Their hyperspace engines created tears in normal space, and the mine explosions destabilized those tears, shredding the ships across multiple dimensions. "Then we fight our way out," Vexthor ordered. "All remaining ships form up on my position. We'll punch through their lines and escape beyond the asteroid belt." But there were no lines to punch through. The humans didn't fight in organized formations. They attacked from every direction at once, using the asteroids as cover. They destroyed ship engines so the vessels couldn't escape, then left them drifting while they hunted fresh targets. It was efficient. It was ruthless. It was tactics the Vrelniks had never encountered before because no other Death World species had ever fought like this. By the time Vexthor's flagship limped out of the asteroid belt, he had lost 400 ships. The remaining 100 were damaged, low on fuel, and demoralized. The greatest fleet the Vrelnik's empire had ever assembled had been destroyed in less than 3 hours. As his ship retreated beyond Neptune's orbit, a final transmission reached him. Admiral Minho Park's voice was calm and almost sympathetic. "Go home, Grand Admiral. Tell your empire what happened here. Tell them that we didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we were smarter. Tell them that every Death World you conquered was inhabited by animals that evolved to survive their environment. We're different. Humans didn't evolve to survive Earth, we evolved to conquer it. We killed every predator that threatened us. We built weapons that could destroy our own planet. We fought wars that nearly made us extinct, and we survived all of it by learning, adapting, and never giving up. Tell your empire that Earth is not a prize to be taken. It's a warning about what happens when a species spends 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing. You came here expecting to fight animals. You found hunters instead. Don't come back." The transmission ended. Vexthor looked at the wreckage of his fleet scattered across the Sol system. He thought about the report he would have to give the Empire, How could he explain that 500 warships had been defeated by a species that had just learned to travel between stars? He couldn't because the truth was too terrible. Earth wasn't just another death world. It was something the galaxy had never seen before. A planet that created a species so good at warfare that even their own destructive capabilities couldn't destroy them. As his damaged flagship limped toward the edge of the solar system, Vexthor realized that the Vrelnik's empire had made a catastrophic mistake. They had poked something that should have been left alone, and now the galaxy would have to deal with the consequences. 6 months after the failed invasion, representatives from 200 civilized worlds gathered at Harmony's Reach, a neutral space station orbiting a blue giant star. The Galactic Council hadn't convened in 20 years. The last time was to discuss trade regulations for rare minerals. This time, the topic was far more serious. Earth, the Vrelnik's empire, had petitioned the Council for an emergency session. They wanted authorization for a full extermination campaign against humanity. They argued that humans represented an existential threat to galactic peace and should be eliminated before they became more powerful. The council chamber was enormous, a circular room with seats arranged in rising tiers. Each species had its own section with environmental controls suited to their biology. Some breathed oxygen like humans. Others required methane or ammonia atmospheres. A few existed as energy beings projected into mechanical bodies. At the center of the chamber stood Captain Jiwon Kim. She wore her United Earth Defense Force uniform, clean and pressed but showing the wear of 6 months of constant warfare. Beside her stood Ambassador Daejin Kwan, an elderly man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had survived the resource wars as a child and spent his adult life trying to prevent humanity from destroying itself. Now he represented Earth to the galaxy. The council speaker, a being whose species had achieved space travel before humans learned to make fire, called the session to order. We are here to discuss the human question. The Vrelnik's empire has presented evidence of human aggression and military capability. Captain Kim, you will speak first. Jiwon stepped forward. She had prepared her speech carefully, but now that she stood before 200 alien species, she decided to speak from the heart instead. Honored representatives, Earth did not want this war. We were given 12 hours to surrender our entire civilization to an empire we had never heard of. We were threatened with extinction if we refused. We responded the only way we could, with everything we had. We fought for survival. A representative from the Harmonium species, beings that resembled floating crystals, spoke in a musical voice, yet you demonstrated military capabilities far beyond what your technological level suggests. You used nuclear fusion weapons in your own atmosphere. You turned civilian infrastructure into military assets within days. You treated total warfare as routine. This concerns us. Jiwon nodded slowly. I understand your concern. Yes, we have powerful weapons. Yes, we know how to fight. But you need to understand why. Let me tell you about Earth. She pulled up a holographic display of her home planet. It rotated slowly, showing blue oceans, green continents, and white clouds. It looked peaceful and beautiful. This is Earth. It looks nice, doesn't it? But Earth has tried to kill us in every way imaginable. Ice ages that lasted tens of thousands of years. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for years. Earthquakes that destroyed entire civilizations. Plagues that killed half our population. Droughts, floods, hurricanes, and disasters we don't even have names for in your languages. The hologram changed to show historical images. Ancient humans hunting mammoths with primitive spears. Medieval cities destroyed by plague. Modern cities devastated by wars. We survived all of that by learning to adapt. By working together. By building tools and weapons and shelters. But Earth wasn't our only enemy. We were also our own enemy. The images changed again, showing battles and wars throughout human history. We fought each other over resources, territory, beliefs, and sometimes just because we were afraid. We built weapons that could destroy cities, then weapons that could destroy countries, then weapons that could destroy our entire planet. A representative from a species that looked like large insects asked, "If you had such weapons, why didn't you destroy yourselves?" "Because we learned," Ambassador Daejin said, stepping forward. I was 7 years old during the resource wars. I watched my city burn. I watched people I loved die. I survived because adults made the choice to stop fighting before we completely destroyed ourselves. That's what makes humans different. He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many representatives as he could. Every species here achieved space travel through peaceful development. You built ships to explore and discover. That's wonderful. Humanity built our first space rockets as weapons. We pointed them at each other before we pointed them at the stars. We learned to kill efficiently before we learned to live peacefully. But we did learn. After nearly destroying ourselves, we stepped back. We chose cooperation over destruction. We built the United Earth Defense Force not to conquer other nations, but to protect all of humanity from external threats. And when the Vrelniks came, that's exactly what we did. The Vrelniks representative, a junior ambassador since their military leadership refused to attend, spoke with barely controlled anger. You destroyed 2 fleets. Thousands of our warriors are dead or captured. You used tactics that no honorable species would employ. You are dangerous and should be eliminated before you threaten the entire galaxy. Jiwan turned to face the Vrelniks representative directly. You invaded 17 death worlds before ours. You killed millions of beings who only wanted to live on their own planets. You did this because you were strong and they were weak. We stopped you because we refused to be weak. That's not aggression. That's survival. The council speaker raised a hand for silence. The council has reviewed all evidence. We have studied recordings of both battles. We have interviewed captured Vrelniks warriors and examined human military doctrine. We must now make a decision. The chamber fell silent. Jiwan felt her heart pounding. Everything depended on what happened in the next few minutes. If the council authorized an extermination campaign, Earth would face the combined military might of 200 species. They might win, but the cost would be devastating. The council speaker consulted with other senior members for several minutes. Finally, he turned back to address the chamber. The council has reached a decision. First, regarding the Vrelniks Empire's petition for extermination, denied. Earth acted in self-defense against unprovoked aggression. Their military response, while brutal, was proportionate to the threat they faced. Jiwan felt relief wash over her, but the council speaker wasn't finished. Second, regarding Earth's petition for membership in the Galactic Council conditionally approved. Humans have demonstrated both the capacity for extreme violence and the wisdom to restrain it. This combination is unusual and potentially valuable. However, we have concerns. The holographic display changed to show data about human warfare, weapons development, and tactical doctrine. Humans are too good at fighting. Your entire civilization has been shaped by conflict. You have instincts and capabilities that concern many council members. Therefore, your membership comes with conditions. Ambassador Dajin stepped forward. What conditions? First, you will share your medical technology. We understand your immune systems are remarkably adaptive due to constant exposure to diseases. This knowledge could save countless lives across the galaxy. Second, you will contribute forces to council peacekeeping operations. Your tactical skills and adaptability are needed to counter actual threats to galactic stability. Third, and most important, you will teach us. You will share what you learned from nearly destroying yourselves. Many council species are young and naive about warfare. We need to understand the dangers before we face them. Jiwan and Dajin looked at each other. These were reasonable conditions. Earth had planned to share their medical knowledge anyway. Peacekeeping operations would give humanity a constructive purpose, and teaching other species about the dangers of warfare might prevent future conflicts. Earth accepts these conditions, Dajin said formally. Then there is one final matter, the council speaker said. The 17 worlds conquered by the Vrelniks Empire will be offered independence, enforced by council peacekeepers. This includes human peacekeepers if you're willing to help liberate the species you fought so hard to remain free of. Jiwan smiled. We would be honored to help. The council speaker struck his staff against the floor, creating a deep, resonant tone. Then it is decided. Earth is welcomed into the Galactic Council as a full member with all rights and responsibilities. This session is concluded. Later, aboard the shuttle returning to Earth, Jiwan sat with her core team. Admiral Minho Park, Engineer Suji Han, Pilot Kyung-Soo Baek, and Tactical Officer Hana Lee had all been granted leave to attend the council session. They had earned it. We did it, Hana said quietly. We're actually part of the galactic community. We survived, Minho corrected gently. That's what humans do. We survive, we adapt, and we keep moving forward. Kyung-Soo looked out at the stars through the shuttle window. What happens now? Now that the galaxy knows what we are? Suji smiled. Now we show them the other side of humanity. We've shown them we can fight. Time to show them we can build, explore, and create. We can be more than warriors. G1 nodded. The Vrelniks made a mistake. They saw Earth's harsh environment and assumed we were just another Death World species. They didn't understand that Earth didn't just create survivors. It created a species capable of both incredible violence and incredible compassion. We can destroy or we can create. We choose creation. The shuttle entered Earth's atmosphere, descending toward the planet that had shaped humanity into something the galaxy had never encountered before. Through the window, G1 could see the lights of cities being rebuilt after the Vrelniks' bombardment. She saw construction vehicles working day and night to repair the damage. She saw evidence of human resilience and determination. Earth had survived the ice ages, the plagues, the volcanic winters, and its own self-destructive wars. It had survived because the species it created refused to give up, refused to stop learning, refused to accept defeat. The Vrelniks' empire had learned that lesson the hard way. They came expecting to conquer another Death World. Instead, they found something far more dangerous, a species that had already conquered the deadliest world in the galaxy. As the shuttle landed in Seoul, Ji-won thought about the future. Humanity would now work alongside 200 other species. They would share knowledge, explore new worlds, and help maintain peace across the galaxy. But if anyone threatened Earth again, if anyone made the mistake of thinking humans were weak or primitive, they would learn the same lesson the Vrelniks learned. Every Death World fell easily to the Vrelniks' empire. 17 worlds conquered without serious resistance, until they came to Earth, until they faced humanity's full fury, and learned that some species don't just survive their Death World. Some species master it.